Shockingly, on a torrential rainy night in Los Angeles, a skeletal, drenched, and utterly desperate black woman bursts into the lair of the most notorious Mafia boss in Koreatown, falling to her knees to beg him to save her son from thugs threatening to kill him. Can you even imagine it? An impoverished mother with nothing left to lose, daring to step into the underworld of blood and power, facing the man the entire city fears, Daniel Kim, the shadowy ruler worth billions, whose heart has long been frozen solid. What happens when her desperate eyes meet his cold gaze? Will it be the start of a deadly tragedy, or a mad love story that defies all boundaries of wealth, race, and sin? Powerful enough to melt the ice in a kingpin's soul. Stay with us right now, because the story about to unfold will keep you glued to the screen. Before we dive into this chilling and mysterious story, please remember to subscribe to the channel Crimson Romance Stories and like this video. Every subscription, like, and share from you is a huge spiritual gift and an incredibly profound source of motivation for the channel's growth, so we can continue bringing wonderful videos every day to everyone. There would be no greater joy than receiving your love and support through the comments you leave right below this video, comments sharing your emotions or telling us which province or city you're living and working in while listening to this story. All right, let's continue together and immerse ourselves in this amazing, captivating story that's filled with deep emotions. It was a relentless rainy night in Los Angeles, the kind where the downpour hammered the streets of Koreatown like an unending punishment. I sat in my usual private booth at Hanwari Grill, the upscale Korean restaurant I owned through layers of companies, my legitimate front in a world built on shadows. The air was thick with the scent of sizzling kalbi and kimchi, jigae, low voices murmuring deals over soju and imported sake. My lieutenants flanked me discussing numbers territories, the usual machinery of power that kept my empire running across the city. I am Daniel Kim Dae-hyun, to those who knew me before America reshaped me into something harder, colder. Fair-skinned, sharp-featured, the kind of Korean American who turned heads in boardrooms and back alleys alike. Wealth beyond measure, penthouses, downtown fleets of black SUVs, influence that made politicians flinch. On the outside, I was untouchable, dominant, the man who commanded fear with a glance. But inside, the loneliness gnawed like a relentless beast. Nights like this, the guilt surged, violent, tearing at the walls I'd built after losing everything that once mattered. My parents gone too young in the old country, no family left, no one to share the weight. I told myself sentiment was weakness, that emotional fractures only invited betrayal. Yet the inner turmoil grew fiercer each year, a storm I buried under control and calculation. The door to the private room burst open, suddenly rain gusting in with the cold wind. Every conversation stopped, my bodyguards' tensed hands hovering near their jackets. But it wasn't a rival or a threat. It was a woman drenched to the bone, stumbling forward as if the storm itself had pushed her inside. She looked like survival's last frayed thread. An African-American woman in her late 20s, emaciated from hunger that hollowed her cheeks, her dark skin pale from exhaustion and cold nights without proper shelter. Her clothes, threadbare coat over a faded waitress uniform, clung soaked and heavy, torn at the edges from who knows what desperation. Hair matted against her forehead, eyes wide with a mix of dread and hopeless determination. She was poverty incarnate, the kind that meant skipped meals to feed a child, sleepless nights worrying over eviction notices, humiliation from endless rejections, despair that crushed the spirit day after day. The brutal gap hit me like a physical blow, my world of endless wealth against her raw, heartbreaking struggle at the edge of existence. She scanned the room frantically, body trembling from cold and fear, breath coming in shallow gasps. Her gaze landed on me the way men deferred the expensive suit, the quiet authority, and something instinctive drove her forward. She collapsed at my feet, grabbing my sleeve with shaking hands, her touch ice cold through the fabric. "Please, sir," she whispered, voice soft, restrained, timid, like someone long accustomed to being dismissed, speaking to power with cautious respect. "They're hurting my boy, my Malik. He's only 8. They're going to kill him if someone doesn't stop them." Her words shattered the silence. Tears mixed with rain on her face, her body swaying as if dizziness threatened to pull her under. Shock, confusion, deep disorientation flashed across her features. Why here? Why me? Why now? She looked powerless, destitute, a woman battered by unfairness and irrational cruelty, debts from medical bills after her husband's death, eviction threats from a heartless landlord, now this rival cruise demanding protection money she didn't have, turning violent on her and her son in their tiny apartment. My heart, armored for years, cracked in that instant. Guilt flooded me, violent inner turmoil erupting. How many times had my world indirectly fueled this kind of street chaos? The gnawing sense of loneliness twisted into fierce protectiveness. This woman, this stranger at the brink, stirred something explosive, a burning affection that surged immediately, passionately, overwhelmingly. Love. It felt like rupture, a psychological shock tearing through my defenses. I wanted to shield her from every cold wind, every humiliation, to erase the despair in her eyes with everything my power could buy. I knelt slowly, meeting her gaze, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "Tell me everything. I'm going to help you." Her eyes widened in fear, then cautious curiosity, suspicion lingering, but hope flickering timidly. She nodded, voice breaking, as she described the men from a rival faction breaking into her rundown apartment in South LA, demanding money, turning on her son when she begged for mercy. The room held its breath. My lieutenants waited for my signal. But in that moment the inner conflict raged. The old me would calculate risks, walk away. This me, the one fractured by loneliness, couldn't. For her, for the boy, I would intervene. I stood helping her to a chair, wrapping my coat around her shivering frame. "Stay here, warm up." Then to my men, "Get the cars, we're going now." As we stepped into the rain, her hand tentatively in mine, fearful yet trusting, the passionate surge intensified. This impoverished woman, so hopeless, yet brave enough to seek me out, had ignited something fierce in my guarded heart. Whatever came next, confrontation's danger, I would protect her. The loneliness was fracturing, replaced by this burning need to save her world. We stepped out into the pouring rain, the neon lights of Koreatown blurring into streaks of red and blue across the wet pavement. My convoy of black SUVs waited at the curb, engines humming low like guarded beasts. I guided her, Sarah. She had whispered her name in a timid voice inside the restaurant, toward the lead vehicle, my hand steady on her elbow, despite the chaos raging inside me. "Get in," I said softly, opening the door myself. "You'll be warm." She nodded, voice restrained and respectful. "Thank you, sir." As she slid into the heated leather seat, a world away from the threadbare blankets and drafty corners she knew. The contrast hit me harder, my life of endless luxury, private jets, penthouse views over the city skyline against her heartbreaking reality. Hunger that gnawed constantly, humiliation from food bank lines, despair from bills piling higher than hope. As we pulled away, my driver navigating the slick streets toward South LA, Sarah sat huddled in my coat, hands clasped tight to stop the shaking. Emotional numbness seemed to settle over her, then shattered into quiet sobs. "Malik, my boy, he's all I got left after his daddy passed. Those men, they said we owed protection, but we ain't got nothing. I work doubles at the diner, but it's never enough." Her words came soft, timid, laced with the pain of irrational cruelty. A landlord who ignored leaks, utilities shut off in winter, now this rival cruise crushing the powerless because they could. The gnawing remorse inside me intensified, violent turmoil, twisting like a blade. How many times had my empire's shadows fed into this street-level injustice? Guilt surged, relentless, fracturing the dominance I wore like armor. Yet alongside it, that burning affection grew fiercer, an overwhelming, passionate love that anchored every thought. This woman, so desperate yet brave enough to storm my world, stirred a rupture in my lonely heart. I wanted to shield her from every cold night, every humiliation, to fill her life with the security my wealth could command. We arrived at her rundown apartment building too soon, a crumbling complex off a dim side street, graffiti marking territories, the air heavy with rain and neglect. My men fanned out quietly as we approached the door. She indicated third floor, no elevator. Sarah's steps faltered, dread and unease flooding her features, body losing balance as shock hit anew. "They're still in there. Please." I nodded to my lieutenant, Tony, loyal for years, understanding my signals without words. We ascended the stairs, Sarah trailing fearfully behind me, her hand brushing mine for reassurance. At the door ajar, and splintered voices echoed roughly inside, three men from a rival faction, laughing over their intimidation. The confrontation erupted unexpectedly, bold and tense on that narrow landing. My men blocked the exit as I pushed in first presence, filling the small, cluttered space. The rivals, young, armed with bravado more than sense, froze, recognizing me instantly. "Kim," one snarled, hand twitching toward his waist, "this ain't your territory." "It's mine now," I replied calmly, voice carrying the weight of dominance. Suspense thickened the air, danger humming like electricity. No blows landed, but stares clashed sharp as knives. Sarah gasped behind me, confusion and heightened curiosity mixing with terror, these men who had crushed her world now backing down before mine. In the corner, little Malik huddled under a thin blanket on the floor, wide-eyed but unharmed, bruises on his arms from rough handling, the sight tearing at me. Sarah rushed to him, pulling him close, her body racked with sobs of relief and lingering pain. The rivals shifted uneasily as my men closed in the standoff, stretching taut. "You terrorized a mother and child over scraps," I said, inner conflict, raging remorse for the world's cruelty I indirectly allowed, passionate need to protect this fragile family, blooming explosive. "Leave. Tell your boss this block is under my watch. Any return, consequences." They backed out slowly, muttering threats, but knowing better, my power eclipsed theirs. As they vanished into the rain, Sarah looked up at me from the floor, cradling Malik. Eyes shifting from fear to cautious wonder, then deep disorientation. "Why? Why help us folks like you don't?" I knelt beside them, the chaos quieting into a tender, condensed moment. My hand gently touched her shoulder, warmth against her cold skin. The loneliness that had gnawed for years fractured further, replaced by this fierce attachment. "Because you came to me," I whispered. "And no one deserves this." In that rundown room, amid absurd injustice and harsh fate, something shifted irrevocably. My heart, long guarded, burned with love for her, for them. The turmoil intensified, but for the first time it felt like purpose. The apartment was silent now, save for the relentless patter of rain against the cracked window, and Malik's soft, uneven breathing as he finally drifted into exhausted sleep on the threadbare couch. Sarah sat beside him, one thin hand stroking his hair, her body still trembling from the aftershock of everything that had just happened. The bruises on the boy's small arms stood out like dark accusations against her pale palm, and every time her gaze fell on them, fresh tears welled up, silent, helpless, the kind that come from a mother who has carried too much for too long. I stood near the door, watching them in the dim glow of a single lamp that flickered whenever the wind rattled the building. My men had cleared the room and posted themselves discreetly in the hallway and on the street below. The rivals were gone for tonight, but the danger lingered like smoke. My chest felt tight, the inner turmoil escalating into something almost unbearable. Remorse clawed deeper. How many years had I profited from the very chaos that now threatened this fragile mother and child? The guilt was violent, a relentless emotional tension that made my hands clench at my sides. Yet overriding it all was that fierce burning love for Sarah, an attachment so immediate, so overwhelming, it felt like a rupture in the fabric of my carefully controlled life. I wanted to gather her up, shield her from every injustice the world had heaped upon her, erase the emaciation carved by hunger, the sleepless nights etched into her beautiful, exhausted face. She looked up at me suddenly, as if sensing the weight of my stare. Confusion and deep disorientation clouded her eyes, followed by a wave of dizziness that made her sway slightly. "Sir, Mr. Kim," she whispered, voice soft and restrained, timid, in the presence of power she could barely comprehend. "I don't understand. Those men, they backed down because of you, but why people like me? We don't get saved. We just survive, or we don't." Her words struck like a blade. The brutal contrast between us burned anew, my world of private security details, offshore accounts, penthouses with floor-to-ceiling views of the glittering Los Angeles skyline against her heartbreaking poverty. An apartment where the heat barely worked, refrigerator echoing empty eviction notices crumpled in a drawer because she couldn't bear to look at them anymore. Cold winds seeping through walls, humiliation at charity offices, the constant gnawing fear that tomorrow there would be even less. I crossed the small room in 3 strides and knelt before her, careful not to crowd the sleeping boy. "You don't have to understand yet," I said quietly, my voice steadier than the storm inside me. "Just know that from this moment, no one touches you or Malik again. Not while I'm breathing." Her breath caught fear, shifting into cautious curiosity, then shock so profound her body trembled harder. Tears spilled over, and she pressed a hand to her mouth to stifle a sob. Emotional numbness gave way to raw pain, the kind that comes when sudden safety collides with years of crushing despair. "I can't pay you back," she whispered, voice breaking. "I got nothing, less than nothing. I'm not asking for payment." I answered the words rough with the intensity of what I felt. The passionate surge grew even stronger, anchoring every beat of my heart to her. I reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a tear from her cheek with my thumb. Her skin was cold, but the contact sent fire through me. "You came to me tonight, Sarah. That was the bravest thing I've seen in years. Let me do this for you, for him." For a long moment, she simply stared, eyes searching mine as if looking for the trick, the hidden cost. Then, in a quiet, emotionally condensed moment of tenderness, she leaned forward just slightly and rested her forehead against my shoulder. The weight of her trust, fragile as it was, nearly undid me. But the night wasn't over. My phone vibrated low against my chest. Tony's voice came through, calm but urgent. Boss words already spreading. The crew that hit her place. They're linked to Javier Reyes's outfit down in Compton. Reyes is calling a sit-down. Says you crossed a line taking his collectors off the board tonight. I ended the call, jaw tightening. Reyes, an ambitious upstart who had been testing boundaries for months. This unexpected street-level conflict was escalating faster than I anticipated. Suspense coiled in the air. Danger now had a name. Sarah lifted her head, sensing the shift. Dread returned to her features, unease deepening. "They're coming back, aren't they?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Not here," I assured her, standing. "But I need to handle this before it touches you again." I turned to the door, then paused. The inner conflict tearing at me, leave her now when she needed safety most, or stay and risk everything spiraling further out of control. The remorse, the violent emotional tension, the fierce need to protect her, all warred inside until I made the only choice I could. I called Tony in. "Move them tonight. The Wilshire penthouse, full security detail. Medical team on standby for the boys' bruises. Everything they need." Then softer to Sarah, "Pack what matters most. You're not coming back here." Her eyes widened in shocked disorientation, sweeping over her again. "The penthouse." "Mr. Kim, I can't—" "You can," I said firmly, the dominance in my tone softened by the burning affection I no longer tried to hide. "And you will. For Malik." She nodded slowly, tears falling anew, not just from fear now, but from the overwhelming rupture of sudden protection after a lifetime of cruel misfortune. As she gathered the few belongings that mattered, a worn photo of her late husband, Malik's favorite stuffed bear, a thin blanket that smelled like home. My heart ached with empathy and fury at the injustice that had brought us here. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing the streets clean for a moment. But deeper conflicts loomed, and I knew the confrontations ahead would test every fracture in my guarded soul. For her, though for Sarah and the boy sleeping trustingly in her arms, I would face them all. The Wilshire penthouse rose high above the city, its floor-to-ceiling windows framing a view of Los Angeles that glittered like scattered diamonds under the clearing night sky. I had owned this place for years, a sanctuary of marble floors, custom Korean oak furnishings, and silence that usually echoed my loneliness. Tonight it felt different. Sarah stood near the glass, Malik asleep in her arms, her thin frame dwarfed by the vast living room. She stared out at the lights below, body swaying with dizziness, as if the height itself threatened to pull her into disorientation. I watched her from across the room, the inner turmoil inside me reaching a new, violent peak. Remorse gnawed relentlessly. How had I accumulated all this wealth, this dominance over streets and boardrooms, while women like Sarah scraped at the edge of survival? The guilt was a living thing, now tearing at the fractures in my heart. Yet the passionate love burned hotter than ever, an overwhelming anchor that made every breath revolve around her. This emaciated, heartbreakingly brave woman, battered by cold winds and sleepless nights of hunger, had become the center of my guarded world in mere hours. She turned slowly, eyes wide with shock and deep confusion. This is yours," she whispered, voice soft, restrained, timid, still addressing me with the careful respect of someone who had learned power could turn cruel in an instant. "Mr. Kim, I can't stay here. Places like this, they ain't for folks like me." I crossed to her, gently taking Malik from her arms and laying him on the wide leather sofa beneath a cashmere throw. The boy stirred, but did not wake. His small face finally relaxed. Sarah's hands trembled as they emptied, emotional numbness giving way to fresh pain. Tears traced silent paths down her cheeks, the rupture of experiencing safety after years of irrational injustice. Utility. Shut-offs and winter food stamps running out mid-month. A husband lost to an accident that left medical bills she could never repay. "You're here now," I said quietly, guiding her to sit. "And you're safe." I poured warm barley tea from the kitchen, something my mother used to make when I was young, and pressed the cup into her cold hands. She wrapped her fingers around it like it was the first warmth she had felt in months. For a quiet, emotionally condensed moment, we simply sat, the city humming far below. Tenderness rose between us, fragile yet undeniable. She sipped the tea, eyes closing briefly in exhausted gratitude. "It's good," she murmured. "Reminds me of something my grandma used to make when I was little, before everything got hard." The words pierced me. I thought of my own childhood in Seoul, the journey to America, the empire built on shadows, while she had fought alone against cruel misfortune that crushed the powerless without mercy. The contrast was unbearable, intensifying my torment until I could barely breathe, but peace shattered too soon. My phone vibrated again. Tony voice, low and urgent. "Boss Reyes isn't waiting for a sit-down. He's sending a message. Crew spotted heading toward the old apartment building. Torches, looks like they plan to burn it as a warning. Word is they're saying no one humiliates them and walks away." Rage flared alongside the remorse, danger escalating into chaos. I stood, dominance returning like armor. "Redirect them. I'll meet Reyes myself. Now." Sarah's head snapped up, dread flooding her features. "They're going back there because of me." Fear made her voice tremble, body losing balance as she rose too quickly, dizziness sweeping over her again. "I brought this on you. I'm sorry." "No," I said firmly, cupping her face gently, thumbs brushing away tears. The touch ignited the burning affection anew, fierce and protective. "You brought light into my darkness. This ends tonight." I left her with 2 trusted guards and a private doctor I summoned for Malik's bruises, then descended to the garage where my convoy waited. The drive south was swift, rain-slicked streets reflecting headlights like warning signals. We intercepted Reyes's crew blocks from Sarah's old building, 6 cars pulling up in a tense, unexpected street-level standoff under flickering street lamps. Javier Reyes stepped out first, younger than me, all flash and false bravado, gold chains glinting. His men spread out, posturing. "Kim," he called, voice laced with arrogance. "You think you can just take my collectors off my block? Protect some broke nobody. This is my territory." Suspense hung thick, danger crackling without a single blow. My men mirrored their silent walls of discipline. I stepped forward, a lone presence cutting through the night. "That broke nobody is a mother who works doubles to feed her child," I said, voice low, but carrying absolute authority. "You sent men to terrorize her and an 8-year-old boy. That crosses every line." Reyes laughed, but unease flickered in his eyes. "Business is business. She didn't pay. She had nothing to give." I replied, the inner conflict raging, remorse for the world I helped shape, passionate need to shield Sarah tearing me apart. "Your business ends on that block, tonight." The standoff stretched, chaotic and numbing, hearts pounding in the silence. Reyes weighed his odds, saw the depth of my resolve, and finally backed down, muttering retreat. His crew dispersed into the night. The message clear: cross me again, and consequences would be final. I returned to the penthouse near dawn, exhaustion mingling with triumph. Sarah waited by the window, wrapped in one of my robes that swallowed her frame. Relief flooded her face, then cautious curiosity. "It's over," she asked softly. For tonight, I admitted, pulling her gently into my arms. She stiffened at first, years of suspicion, then melted against me, the emotional rupture complete. In that quiet moment of tenderness amid the glittering city far below, I knew I would burn the world before letting harm touch her again. The turmoil inside me had transformed no longer just loneliness, but a fierce, passionate purpose centered entirely on her. Dawn filtered through the penthouse windows, painting the marble floors in soft gold. I had not slept. Instead, I sat in the leather armchair across from the guest suite, watching the door where Sarah and Malik had finally settled hours earlier. The private doctor had examined the boy bruises, healing no deeper harm, and prescribed rest, warm meals, vitamins. Simple things that should have been everyday rights, not luxuries. The thought twisted the remorse deeper inside me, a violent emotional tension that clawed without mercy. How many nights had Sarah gone hungry so Malik could eat? How many cold winds had cut through their thin walls while I slept under heated silk sheets in rooms like this? My phone lay dark and silent on the table, no further word from Reyes. The standoff last night had bought time, but I knew ambition like his did not surrender easily. The inner conflict raged fiercer than ever. The man who commanded Los Angeles shadows now felt powerless against the guilt of how those shadows had touched her life. Yet the passionate love burned brighter, an overwhelming anchor that made every heartbeat echo her name. Sarah, this destitute, heartbreaking woman who had braved my world with nothing but a mother's desperation, had become my purpose. The door opened quietly. Sarah emerged wrapped in one of my oversized robes, hair tousled from restless sleep. She froze when she saw me, eyes widening in shock, then softening with cautious curiosity. Dizziness seemed to sway her again. She gripped the doorframe body, still adjusting to safety after years of teetering on the edge. "Mr. Kim," she whispered, voice soft and timid, respectful as always. You stayed up all night." I rose slowly, crossing to her. "I needed to know you were safe." The words carried more weight than I intended, raw, with the burning affection I no longer hid. She searched my face, confusion deepening into disorientation. How could a man of my wealth and dominance look at someone as powerless as her? With such intensity, I made coffee, I said, guiding her to the kitchen island, where a full breakfast waited: fresh fruit eggs, warm rice porridge, like my mother once made pancakes for Malik when he woke. Simple abundance, yet her eyes filled with tears at the sight. Emotional numbness cracked, pain surfaced in quiet sobs. "I ain't seen food like this since—" "I don't even remember," she murmured, hand trembling as she touched a ripe strawberry. The humiliation of her poverty, skipped meals, expired cans from food banks. The gnawing hunger that stole sleep rose like a ghost between us. We sat in a quiet, emotionally condensed moment. She ate slowly, as if afraid it might vanish. I watched the contrast, unbearable, my empire's endless resources against the emaciation carved into her cheeks by cruel misfortune. "You don't have to be afraid anymore," I said gently. "Whatever you need. Close school for. Malik a doctor, it's yours." Her fork paused. Dread flickered, then heightened curiosity. "Why me?" she asked, voice breaking. "I'm nobody. Broke, tired, always one step from the street. You could help anybody. Why waste it on us?" The question struck like lightning. Inner turmoil erupted, remorse for lives my world had indirectly crushed, violent tension at the injustice she had endured alone. I reached across the island, covering her cold hand with mine. "Because you're not nobody," I said, voice rough with passion. "You're the strongest person I've ever met, and I can't walk away from you." Her breath caught, fear shifting to shock so profound her body trembled. Tears spilled freely now, the emotional rupture of affection after a lifetime of abandonment and struggle. She turned her hand, palm up, beneath mine, tentative trust blooming. But tenderness shattered again. Tony knocked once and entered, face grim. Boss Reyes didn't back down. He hit one of our neutral drops early this morning, message loud and clear. And there's talk he's digging into the woman's background, looking for leverage. Danger escalated, chaotic and numbing. I stood, dominance returning like steel. "Call the council. We end this today." Sarah's face drained of color, unease flooding her. "Because of me, more trouble." She rose too quickly, dizziness sweeping her. I caught her as she swayed, pulling her close. The feel of her against me ignited the fierce love anew, protective and consuming. "Not because of you," I whispered against her hair, "because men like Reyes prey on the vulnerable. I won't let him near you again." Hours later, under a gray midday sky, the confrontation unfolded on neutral ground, an abandoned warehouse near the LA River. Reyes arrived with twice the men, posturing bold and unexpected on the cracked concrete. Suspense thickened the air. Danger hummed without a shot fired. "You think one good deed makes you a hero?" Kim Reyes sneered. "That broke single mom you're hiding, she's just collateral now." The words ignited rage. Inner torment piqued remorse for the cruelty my silence had once allowed, passionate need to shield Sarah, tearing me apart. I stepped forward alone. "Touch her or the boy and your empire ends tonight," I said. Voice low, absolute. The standoff stretched, hearts pounding. Reyes weighed loss against pride, saw the depth of my resolve, and finally retreated, muttering terms, ceding ground. My power held. I returned to the penthouse as afternoon light slanted through the windows. Sarah waited by the glass, Malik playing quietly with new toys on the rug. Relief flooded her face, then cautious wonder. I pulled her into my arms without words. She melted against me, the emotional rupture, complete trust after despair, affection after isolation. In that quiet moment, amid the glittering city far below, the turmoil inside me settled into fierce purpose. For Sarah, I would reshape my world. Days blurred into a fragile new rhythm inside the penthouse. Sarah moved through the vast spaces like a ghost, at first feet silent on heated floors, eyes wide with lingering disorientation, as if waiting for the dream to shatter and return her to the cold winds and empty cupboards. Malik resilient in the way only children can be, adapted faster, laughing at cartoons on the massive screen, devouring meals with wide-eyed wonder, asking innocent questions about the city lights far below. But Sarah carried the weight of her past like chains she could not yet drop. I watched her constantly, the inner turmoil inside me now a constant storm. Remorse had become a living wound, every glimpse of her thin wrists, every hesitant bite she took as if afraid the food might vanish, drove the guilt deeper. How had I built an empire of wealth and dominance while women like her starved in its shadows? The violent emotional tension clawed without relief, fracturing the cold control I'd worn for decades. Yet the love, the fierce burning, overwhelming love, grew only stronger, anchoring my every thought to her. Sarah had become the light, piercing my darkness, the reason my guarded heart now beat with desperate purpose. One quiet afternoon, sunlight streaming through the windows, I found her in the kitchen, staring at a full refrigerator. She stood frozen, hand on the door, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. Emotional numbness had given way to raw pain. Her body swayed with dizziness as memories flooded back, sleepless nights, counting pennies, choosing between medicine and milk, the humiliating sting of charity lines where pride died a little more each time. I approached slowly. "Sarah," I said softly, voice rough with the intensity I felt. She startled, turning with that timid respect still in her posture. "Mr. Kim?" "Daniel," she corrected herself, voice restrained and soft. "I'm sorry. I ain't never seen so much food in one place, not since I was a girl." The words broke something in me. I pulled her gently into my arms, feeling her initial stiffness, years of suspicion of learning that kindness often came with strings, melt into tentative trust. She rested her head against my chest, sobs quiet but tearing. "It don't feel real," she whispered, "like I'm gonna wake up back there cold and scared with Malik crying from hunger." "You're here," I murmured, hand stroking her hair, "and you'll never go back to that." The passionate surge flared, consuming. Wanted to give her everything my wealth could buy: security, warmth, a future without fear. In that emotionally condensed moment of tenderness, the city far below us, I felt her begin to believe. But the outside world refused to stay quiet. Tony called late that evening, voice tight. "Boss Reyes is pushing again. Word is he's spreading rumors saying you've gone soft over a woman challenging your hold on the west side. A couple of his lieutenants were spotted near the building testing security. Danger escalated, once more chaotic and numbing. I felt the dominance rise like armor, but beneath it, the remorse and tension tore deeper. Every threat now felt personal, a direct assault on the fragile happiness I was building with her. I could not let Reyes near them. That night, under cover of darkness, I met Reyes's lieutenants in an unexpected street-level confrontation near MacArthur Park. My convoy boxed theirs in a dimly lit alley, no weapons drawn, just presence and will clashing in the humid air. Suspense hung thick, hearts pounded in the silence. One lieutenant, bold and foolish, stepped forward. "Reyes says you're distracted, Kim, protecting some charity case. Maybe it's time someone else ran things." I moved closer, fair-skinned features calm, but eyes burning with controlled fury. "Tell Reyes," I said, voice low and absolute, "that the woman and child are under my protection. Any move against them is a move against me. And I don't lose." The standoff stretched, danger crackling. They weighed their odds against my reputation, my resources, the men who stood unwavering behind me. Finally, they backed down, engines revving as they retreated into the night. My power held, but the cost gnawed, another reminder of the world I could never fully escape. I returned to the penthouse near midnight. Sarah waited in the living room, wrapped in a blanket, eyes shadowed with dread and unease. "I heard the cars leave," she said softly, rising unsteadily. "More trouble because of us." I crossed to her, pulling her close. Not because of you, I answered, the burning love surging fierce and protective. Because some men only understand strength, but it's handled. She searched my face, fear shifting to cautious wonder, then to a deep emotional rupture that brought fresh tears. I don't know how to live in your world, she whispered, voice breaking, but I don't want to lose you. The confession undid me. Inner conflict piqued remorse for dragging her deeper into danger. Passionate need to keep her forever tearing at my soul. I cupped her face, thumbs brushing tears. You won't. I promised, voice rough with everything I felt. I'll burn it all down before I let anything take you from me. In the quiet that followed, city lights glittering below, we held each other, two souls from opposite ends of fortune, finding refuge in the storm. The turmoil inside me had become a fire, but for the first time it burned with hope. Weeks slipped by in the penthouse, each day layering fragile normalcy over the raw edges of our beginnings. Malik thrived, cheeks filling out from regular meals, laughter echoing through rooms that had known only silence before. He called me Mr. Daniel with shy respect, tugging at my sleeve to show drawings of superheroes who looked suspiciously like me. Sarah watched him with quiet wonder, as if afraid joy might prove temporary. She gained weight slowly, the sharp angles of hunger softening, but the shadows in her eyes lingered, sleepless nights of worry, etched deep memories of cold winds and empty cupboards that no luxury could instantly erase. I observed every change, the inner turmoil inside me, now a relentless inferno. Remorse had evolved into something sharper, more violent, an emotional tension that woke me at night, pacing the darkened halls. How many years had my empire's influence cast long shadows that allowed cruelty like Reyes's to flourish? The guilt gnawed without mercy, fracturing the dominance I projected to the world. Yet the love, the surging, overwhelming, fiercely passionate love for Sarah, burned brighter than any torment, anchoring my soul to her with unbreakable intensity. She had become my redemption, the one pure light in a life built on control and calculation. One evening, as golden sunset painted the city below, I found her on the balcony, wrapped in a cashmere shawl, staring at the horizon. She turned when she heard me, eyes reflecting cautious curiosity mixed with lingering disorientation. "Daniel," she said, softly, voice still restrained and respectful, though warmth crept in now. "Sometimes I stand here and think, this can't be my life. Penthouse views, food whenever I want, Malik safe. It feels like I stole it from somebody who deserves it more." Her words struck deep. I stepped behind her, arms encircling her waist, gently feeling her initial tension ease into trust. "You deserve it more than anyone," I murmured against her hair. The contrast tore at me anew, my world of private helicopters, offshore wealth influence, that bent city halls against her heartbreaking years of destitution, emaciation from skipped meals, humiliation at welfare offices, despair that had nearly broken her spirit. In that quiet, emotionally condensed moment, she leaned back against me, hand covering mine. Tenderness flowed between us, healing and profound. "I was so scared that night I came to you," she whispered. "Thought you'd turn me away. Or worse. But you gave us everything." The confession ignited the burning affection anew. I turned her to face me, cupping her cheeks. "I'd give you the world if I could," I said, voice rough with passion. Our gazes locked, and for the first time, she rose on her toes, pressing her lips to mine, hesitant, then fierce. The kiss was rupture and release. Years of her isolation meeting my guarded loneliness in a surge of overwhelming connection. But even tenderness could not shield us forever. Tony's call came the next morning, voice grave. "Boss Reyes is done testing. He's calling in markers from old allies, planning a bold move on one of our downtown warehouses tonight. Says if you're distracted by personal matters, it's open season." Danger escalated into open chaos. The inner conflict piqued remorse for dragging Sarah deeper into my world. Violent tension at the threat now aimed indirectly at her safety. I could not let Reyes win. That night, under cover of urban shadows, the confrontation unfolded on a rain-slicked street near the warehouse district. Reyes's reinforced crew arrived, heavy posturing with unexpected boldness, engines revving, men spreading out in a clear challenge. Suspense thickened the air. Danger crackled like live wire. Reyes stepped forward, smirking. "Heard you're playing house now, Kim. Soft spots make weak targets." The taunt ignited fury. I advanced, a lone presence cutting through the tension. "Your mistake," I said calmly, voice carrying absolute dominance. "Thinking love makes me weak. It makes me unstoppable." The standoff stretched, hearts pounding in the silence. Reyes's men shifted uneasily, sensing the depth of my resolve, my resources deeper, my reputation unbreakable. No blows fell, but wills clashed until Reyes backed down once more, retreating with muttered concessions ground, seated permanently. I returned to the penthouse near dawn, adrenaline fading into exhaustion. Sarah waited in the living room, blanket around her shoulders, eyes shadowed with dread. "I felt it," she said softly as I entered. Something bad almost happened. Fear made her voice tremble. She rose unsteadily, dizziness sweeping her. I caught her pulling her close. "It's handled," I whispered, the burning love surging protective and fierce. "Reyes is finished." She searched my face, unease, shifting to shock, then deep emotional rupture tears spilling as the weight of safety after lifelong injustice crashed over her. "I don't know how to thank you," she sobbed against my chest. "You keep saving us. You saved me first." I answered, voice breaking with everything I felt. In that quiet moment, city awakening far below, we held each other, two hearts forged in opposite fires, finding unbreakable strength together. The turmoil inside me had transformed into fierce resolve. For Sarah, for Malik, I would end every threat. Love had become my greatest power. The city settled into an uneasy calm after the warehouse standoff, but I knew better than to trust silence. Reyes had retreated, licking wounds to his pride, yet ambition, like his, always festered. Inside the penthouse, life blossomed in small, precious ways. Malik started at a private school downtown, uniform, crisp backpack, new eyes bright with possibilities he had never known. Sarah accompanied him the first morning, hand trembling on the elevator button, dressed in clothes I had quietly arranged, simple, elegant fittings, her like she had always belonged in comfort. She returned quieter, standing at the window for long minutes, city sprawling far below. I watched her from the doorway, the inner turmoil now a ceaseless roar. Remorse had deepened into a violent, unrelenting force. Every glimpse of her lingering thinness, every hesitant smile that still carried echoes of hunger and humiliation, drove the guilt like a stake through my heart. How had my empire of wealth and dominance stood idle while she endured sleepless nights, choosing between rent and food, cold winds slicing through cracked windows, the crushing weight of irrational injustice that ground the powerless into dust? The emotional tension clawed without mercy, fracturing the cold facade I had perfected over decades. Yet the love, the surging, overwhelming, fiercely passionate love for Sarah, burned with an intensity that consumed every shadow, anchoring my existence to her alone. She was my salvation, the one truth in a life built on calculated power. That afternoon, rain began again, drumming against the glass. Sarah joined me on the sofa, curling close, head on my shoulder. A quiet, emotionally condensed moment unfolded, her breathing, steadying my arm around her like a shield. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop," she whispered, voice soft and restrained, still carrying timid respect. "Like somebody gonna come say this was all a mistake, send us back to the cold." I tilted her chin, meeting her eyes. "No one takes you from here," I said, was rough with the burning affection I no longer restrained. "Not ever." The words carried promise and possession both. She searched my face, dread easing into cautious wonder, then deep disorientation as the reality sank in. Tears welled. Her body swayed with dizziness, the emotional rupture of unwavering protection after lifelong abandonment overwhelming her. She pressed closer, lips finding mine in a kiss that deepened slowly, fiercely, years of her isolation, pouring into trust, my guarded heart finally yielding completely. But calm shattered that same evening. Tony's call came urgent. "Boss Reyes isn't done. He's gone rogue, hit a community market in South LA that's under our quiet protection. Burned stalls, roughed up vendors. Word is, he's spreading that you're too distracted by personal matters to hold the line." Danger escalated into open defiance, chaotic and numbing. Inner conflict piqued remorse for the innocent lives my delayed response might have caused, violent tension at Reyes, daring to strike where Sarah once scraped for survival. I could not let this stand. Under darkening skies, the confrontation unfolded boldly on a rain-soaked street near the market ruins. Reyes waited with swollen numbers, posturing defiance, torched debris smoking behind him, vendors watching fearfully from doorways. Suspense hung heavy, danger crackled in the downpour. Reyes stepped forward, rain streaking his face. "Thought you'd show Kim, protecting your little charity project while the streets burn. Maybe it's time for new management." The taunt ignited fury. I advanced through the rain presence, cutting the tension like a blade. You burned families' livelihoods, I said, voice low. Absolute. Over pride. That ends now. The standoff stretched, water-pounding asphalt breaths visible in the chill. Reyes's men shifted, sensing the imbalance, my resources deeper, my resolve unbreakable. No blows landed, but wills clashed until Reyes faltered, conceding ground. With bitter retreat, his challenge crushed. I returned soaked and weary near midnight. Sarah waited in the entry, blanket around her shoulders, eyes shadowed with dread. I saw the news, she said softly, voice trembling. The market, that's near where we used to live. Fear made her sway. I caught her as dizziness hit. It's handled, I whispered, holding her tight. Reyes is finished. She pulled back, searching my face, unease, shifting to shock, then profound emotional rupture. Tears spilled as the weight of safety after decades of cruel misfortune crashed over her. You keep fighting for us, she sobbed, when nobody ever did before. I cupped her face, thumbs brushing tears, the burning love surging fierce and eternal. Because you're my world now, I answered, voice breaking. In that quiet moment, rain drumming outside, we clung together, two souls from opposite fates forging unbreakable strength. The turmoil inside me had become sacred fire. For Sarah, I would end every threat, build every dream. Love had rewritten my destiny. The threats from Reyes faded into rumor, then silence, as my influence quietly reshaped the streets. His operation crumbled alliances, withdrawn resources dried up until he vanished from Los Angeles altogether. The city breathed easier in places it had long forgotten how to. Inside the penthouse, a deeper peace settled. Malik's laughter became the soundtrack of mornings, his small hand slipping into mine without hesitation when we walked to the private garden on the roof. Sarah bloomed in ways that stole my breath, color returning to her cheeks, curves softening the sharp edges hunger had carved, eyes bright with cautious hope instead of constant dread. Yet the inner turmoil inside me refused to quiet. If anything, it intensified a violent emotional tension that woke me before dawn, staring at the ceiling, while guilt and remorse battled the fierce love that now defined me. Every time I saw Sarah laugh freely or Malik sleep without fear, the contrast struck like a hammer. My life of endless wealth, private security influence that silenced rivals against the heartbreaking years she had endured alone, emaciated from skipped meals, humiliated by charity rejections, battered by cold winds and sleepless nights of despair. How had I lived in the same city, breathing the same air, while she fought for scraps at the edge of survival? The gnawing remorse fractured me further, exposing cracks I had long sealed with dominance and control. One quiet evening in early fall, leaves turning gold far below our windows. Sarah found me in the study. I sat at the desk staring at old photographs, my parents in Seoul before America, before the empire. She approached hesitantly, voice soft and restrained. "Daniel," she said, timid respect still threading her words, though love warmed them now. "You look far away." I pulled her onto my lap, arms encircling her like a vow. She fit against me perfectly, head resting on my shoulder. In that emotionally condensed moment, tenderness wrapped us close. "I keep thinking about everything you went through," I admitted, voice rough. "Before that night you came to me. The injustice of it. It tears at me." Her hand touched my cheek, eyes searching mine, dread flickering briefly, then shifting to deep disorientation. "I don't think about it much anymore," she whispered. "Because of you. You gave us a life I never dreamed." Tears welled. Her body swayed with dizziness as emotion surged. The rupture hit hard, the overwhelming shock of affection after lifelong abandonment, protection after powerlessness. She kissed me then, slow and fierce, pouring gratitude and love into every touch. But even love could not shield us from lingering shadows. A message arrived, days later, not from Reyes, but from an older debt. One of my lieutenants uncovered irregularities in a legitimate import business. I used as cover money, skimmed quietly for months, traced to a mid-level manager named Victor Han, a Korean-American who had risen through loyalty but now harbored resentment over perceived slights. Tony briefed me in the study. "He's been diverting funds, boss. Small at first, then bolder. Says you've gone soft, spending too much time and resources on personal matters." The words ignited fresh turmoil. Inner conflict raged, remorse for trusting too loosely, violent tension at betrayal from within. Sarah's safety, Malik's future, everything I now cherished felt suddenly vulnerable. That night, the confrontation unfolded unexpectedly in a dimly lit parking structure downtown. Victor arrived alone, thinking it a routine meeting only to find my men waiting. Suspense thickened the concrete air. Danger hummed without a hand raised. Victor paled under the fluorescent lights. Daniel, Kim, he stammered, voice losing bravado. If this is about the discrepancies, I can explain. You stole from the organization, I said calmly. Stepping close, dominance absolute, while I protected my family. That ends now. The standoff stretched, his excuses crumbling under my gaze. He confessed greed mixed with jealousy over my distraction. No blows fell, but consequences were clear: exile, restitution, or worse. He chose compliance funds, returned presents erased from my world. I returned home heavy with the weight of it. Sarah waited in the bedroom, sensing my mood. Another fight, she asked softly, rising from the bedrobe, slipping from her shoulders. Betrayal from inside, I admitted, pulling her close. Dread shadowed her eyes, unease deepening. Because of us. Because of weakness, I allowed. I answered, the burning love surging, protective. But it's handled. She trembled. Fear shifting to shock. Then profound emotional rupture, tears spilling as the fragility of her old life collided with this new security. I hate that you have to keep fighting for me, she sobbed. I held her tight, her voice fierce with passion. I'd fight forever for you. In that quiet moment, moonlight silvering the room, we clung together, loved the unbreakable force against every shadow. The turmoil inside me burned hotter, but now it fueled resolve. For Sarah, I would purge every threat, build an untouchable world. Love had become my greatest strength. Autumn deepened, leaves carpeting the rooftop garden in crimson and gold. Malik chased them in delighted circles, his laughter a sound I had come to crave like air. Sarah watched from the bench, wrapped in a soft sweater, her face turned to the weak sun. The transformation in her was profound, skin glowing with health, body filling out the curves. Hunger had stolen, eyes carrying light instead of constant shadow. Yet traces of the past lingered in small ways, the way she still portioned food carefully, or paused before opening the refrigerator as if expecting emptiness. I stood nearby, hands in pockets, the inner turmoil, now a constant violent storm. Remorse had become an open wound. Every happy moment with them amplified the guilt of how long she had suffered in poverty's grip while my empire flourished untouched. Sleepless nights replaying her emaciated frame, that first rain-soaked evening, the humiliation she had endured at charity doors, the cold winds that had bitten through thin walls while I slept in heated luxury. The emotional tension clawed deeper, fracturing the dominance that had defined me. How could a man of such wealth and power have been so blind to suffering mere miles away? Yet the love, the surging, overwhelming, fiercely passionate love for Sarah burned with purifying fire, anchoring every fractured piece of me to her. She was my absolution, the reason I now measured success not in territory, but in her smile. One crisp morning, as frost edged the windows, Sarah joined me in the kitchen while Malik still slept. She poured coffee with steady hands, something that once trembled from weakness, and leaned against the counter. "Daniel," she said softly, voice warm yet still carrying that restrained respect. "I've been thinking. I want to do something, give back, maybe help at a shelter or start a little program for moms like I was." Her words struck like grace. I set my cup down, crossing to her. "Whatever you want," I answered, voice rough with emotion. In that quiet, emotionally condensed moment, I pulled her close, feeling her heartbeat against mine. Tenderness flowed, her hands on my chest, my lips brushing her forehead. "You've already given me everything," I whispered. The kiss that followed was slow, deep, the burning affection surging, complete and eternal. But peace remained fragile. Tony's warning came that afternoon. Victor Hahn, the exiled manager, had not accepted defeat quietly. He had linked with remnants of Reyes's scattered crew, feeding them information, plotting a bold strike on a charity event I quietly funded in South LA, a community center opening Sarah had inspired me to support. Danger escalated into direct threat. Inner conflict tore anew, remorse for past leniency toward Victor. Violent tension at him daring to endanger the good we were building. Sarah's dream of giving back now risked becoming collateral. That evening, under gathering clouds, the confrontation unfolded unexpectedly at the community center site. Victor arrived with a small, desperate crew intending disruption, vandalism, time to humiliate. My men intercepted them on the street outside, suspense thickening the twilight air. Victor faced me across the chain-link fence, eyes bitter. "You threw me away for her," he spat, "a nobody from the streets." I stepped closer. "Dominance absolute." "You threw yourself away," I said calmly. "Stealing while I protected innocence. This ends." The standoff stretched, danger humming in the chill. Victor's men wavered, sensing the imbalance, my resources' vast resolve unbreakable. No destruction occurred. They retreated under pressure, Victor's final scheme crumbling. I returned home late, the weight heavy. Sarah waited in the living room, sensing trouble. "The center?" she asked softly, rising unsteadily, dread in her eyes. "Safe," I assured, pulling her into my arms. Unease shifted to shock as I explained. "Victor, he came for us." Tears spilled, her body trembling with dizziness, the emotional rupture of old fears resurfacing amid new security. "I brought this danger," she sobbed. "My past." "No," I said, fiercely cupping her face. "You brought light. I'll end every shadow for you." In that quiet moment, frost glittering outside, we held each other. Love, the unbreakable shield against lingering injustice. The turmoil inside me burned with sacred purpose. For Sarah, I would forge a world without fear. Winter crept closer, the Los Angeles air turning crisp enough to remind even the wealthy that seasons still changed. Inside the penthouse, warmth wrapped us like a promise kept. Malik decorated a small Christmas tree with wide-eyed wonder, hanging ornaments higher than he could reach, until I lifted him laughing onto my shoulders. Sarah stood back, hands clasped, eyes shining with tears she tried to hide. Tears born not of sorrow now, but of the overwhelming rupture that came when memory collided with miracle. She still woke sometimes in the night, reaching across the bed as if expecting emptiness, only to find me there, solid and real. I watched her constantly, the inner turmoil, now a raging inferno that consumed sleep and peace alike. Remorse had become a violent living torment. Every joyful moment amplified the agony of how long she had suffered in silence while my empire amassed fortunes mere miles away. Sleepless nights replaying the emaciation of her body that first rainy evening, the humiliation she had swallowed at food pantries, the cold winds that had stolen warmth from her bones while I commanded heated palaces. The emotional tension tore without cease, exposing raw fractures in the dominance I had once believed unbreakable. How could a man of such wealth and power have allowed such cruelty to exist in his city? Yet the love, the surging, overwhelming, fiercely passionate love for Sarah, burned with a heat that purified even the darkest guilt, anchoring my shattered heart to her alone. She was my redemption, my reason, my everything. One quiet Sunday morning, snow flurries rare for Los Angeles dusting the balcony. Sarah slipped into my study carrying 2 mugs of hot cocoa. Malik was still asleep. She set one mug before me, then hesitated. Voice soft, restrained, laced with lingering respect. "Daniel," she whispered, "I've been having dreams again. Not the bad ones, dreams where I'm back there, hungry, scared, alone. Then I wake up here and it hurts how good this feels, like I don't deserve it." Her confession struck like thunder. I pulled her gently into my lap, arms encircling her protectively. In that emotionally condensed moment, tenderness enveloped us. Her head against my chest, my hand stroking her back. "You deserve every good thing," I said. Voice rough with the burning intensity of what I felt, more than anyone I've ever known. The kiss that followed was slow, deep. A silent vow, love surging, complete, eternal healing. But shadows never stayed buried long. Tony's call came that afternoon, voice grave. Boss Victor Hand's desperation turned ugly. He's not just leaking old routes, he's feeding false tips to federal agents trying to draw heat on you personally. Says if he falls, you fall with him. And he's spreading word that your family makes you vulnerable. Danger escalated into existential threat. Inner conflict erupted, remorse for ever trusting Victor, violent tension at him, endangering the life I had built with Sarah and Malik. The thought of federal scrutiny touching them was unbearable. That night, under cold starlight, the confrontation unfolded boldly in an empty industrial lot on the edge of the city. Victor arrived alone, thinking it negotiation, only to find my closest men waiting. Suspense thickened the frosty air. Danger hummed sharp and immediate. Victor faced me across the cracked concrete, eyes wild with cornered fear. "You can't silence me forever, Daniel," he hissed. "One call and the feds swarm your perfect little life." I stepped closer. Dominance, absolute voice, calm as ice. "You threatened my family," I said, "after everything I gave you. That ends tonight." The standoff stretched, breath clouding in the chill. Victor weighed escape against reality, my influence deeper, connections wider. No chaos erupted. He crumbled under pressure, handing over evidence, agreeing to permanent disappearance abroad. Threat neutralized. I returned near dawn, frost on my coat. Sarah waited in the bedroom doorway, blanket around her shoulders, eyes shadowed with dread. "I felt you leave," she whispered, voice trembling. "More danger because of me." I pulled her close, the burning love surging fierce and protective. "Because of choices I made long ago," I answered, "but never because of you." She trembled. Fear shifting to shock, then profound emotional rupture, tears spilling as old insecurities crashed against present safety. "I'm scared. I'll lose this," she sobbed. "Lose you." "Never," I vowed, cupping her face, thumbs brushing tears. In that quiet moment, dawn light creeping through curtains, we held each other. Love, the unbreakable fortress against every storm. The turmoil inside me had become holy fire. For Sarah, I would face any reckoning. Love had made me invincible. Victor Hahn's final betrayal unraveled quietly in the weeks that followed. Federal tips traced back to him, evidence surrendered under pressure, his desperate bid for revenge dissolving into exile. The city's undercurrents stilled. Even old rivals offered cautious respect, sensing the shift in me. No longer just the calculated kingpin, but a man who would raise empires for family. Inside the penthouse, spring arrived early, balcony doors opened to warm breezes, Malik planting herbs in pots. Sarah humming old gospel tunes while cooking meals that filled the air with comfort. I watched them from the study doorway, the inner turmoil now a profound, violent reckoning. Remorse had carved itself permanent. Every laugh from Malik, every relaxed breath Sarah took in sleep amplified the agony of her past suffering under my unwitting indifference. Years of her emaciation from hunger, humiliation at eviction courts, cold winds stealing warmth, while I commanded heated fortresses of glass and steel. The emotional tension burned without end, exposing every fracture in the dominance I had worn like armor. How could wealth this vast have coexisted with poverty this cruel in the same streets? Yet the love, the surging, overwhelming, fiercely passionate love for Sarah had become the fire that forged those fractures into strength, anchoring my soul with unbreakable devotion. She was my heart reborn, the woman who had stormed my guarded world and claimed it forever. One soft spring evening sunset painting the sky in rose and gold. Sarah found me on the balcony. Malik slept early, exhausted from a day at the park. She approached quietly, wrapping arms around me from behind. "Daniel." She whispered, voice warm, yet still carrying that soft restraint born of old caution. "You've been quiet today." Something weighing onto you, I turned, pulling her close, hands framing her face. In that emotionally condensed moment, tenderness enveloped us. City lights beginning to sparkle far below, breeze carrying jasmine from the garden. "I keep seeing you that first night," I admitted, voice rough with intensity. "Soaked, desperate, brave enough to face me with nothing. And I think how close I came to never knowing you." Tears welled in her eyes, dread flickering briefly at the memory, then shifting to deep disorientation. Dizziness swaying her as emotion surged. The rupture hit hard, years of powerlessness crashing against this overwhelming protection and affection. "I was so scared," she confessed, voice breaking. "Thought I'd lose everything. But you gave me more than everything." The kiss was fierce, passionate love, surging, complete, eternal healing every wound. She melted against me, hands clutching my shirt as if anchoring herself to this reality. But even spring could not banish final shadows. A last message arrived. Victor from some distant exile had left one parting poison, anonymous documents sent to authorities questioning old transactions, forcing a quiet federal review. Not enough to topple me, but enough to cast temporary clouds over legitimate holdings. Danger lingered in bureaucratic form, numbing and persistent. Inner conflict piqued remorse for past choices, now risking the future I built for them. Violent tension at Victor's reach from afar. I mobilized lawyers' influence, quiet, decisive. One tense afternoon during a discreet meeting downtown, remnants of Victor's old allies attempted a bold street-level intimidation, cars blocking mine outside the federal building, posturing defiance. Suspense thickened the humid air. Danger crackled without escalation. A former associate stepped forward. "Victor says you're finished, Kim." Distracted, weak. I emerged calmly, dominance absolute. "Tell Victor," I said, voice low and final, "that weakness is betraying family. Strength is protecting it at any cost." The standoff stretched, engines idling, stairs clashing. They weighed consequences against my unyielding resolve. Resources deeper, reach wider. They retreated without incident, message delivered. Cross me again. And exile becomes oblivion. I returned home as dusk fell. Sarah waited on the balcony, sensing the strain. More trouble, she asked softly, rising unsteadily, fear in her eyes. Echoes of old mistakes, I answered, pulling her into my arms. Unease shifted to shock as I explained. But nothing touches us. Tears spilled her body, trembling, the emotional rupture of lingering injustice, threatening this hard-won peace. I hate that my past keeps hurting you, she sobbed. Your past saved me. I whispered, fiercely cupping her face. You saved me. In that quiet moment, city glowing below, we held each other off the eternal shield against every remnant storm. The turmoil inside me had become sacred resolve. Every threat purged, every shadow banished. For Sarah, for Malik, I had forged an untouchable world. Love had rewritten everything. Summer returned to Los Angeles with its familiar heat, the kind that shimmered off concrete and made the city pulse. The penthouse had become a true home now. Malik's artwork taped to walls, Sarah's small herb garden thriving on the balcony, photographs of the three of us filling frames that once stood empty. We had traveled briefly to Jeju Island the previous spring, my private jet carrying us across the Pacific so Sarah could see where my roots began. She had stood on black sand beaches, hand in mine, eyes wide with wonder that still carried echoes of disbelief. I watched her daily, the inner turmoil reaching its most intense crescendo yet. Remorse had become a sacred agony, every ordinary joy, every shared meal, every night. She slept peacefully beside me, amplified the torment of her former suffering. Visions of her emaciated frame in that first rain, the humiliating nights counting change for milk, cold winds cutting through thin blankets while I commanded climate-controlled towers of glass and wealth. The violent emotional tension no longer fractured me. It refined me, burning away the last cold layers of the man I had been. Yet the love, the surging, overwhelming, fiercely passionate love for Sarah, had grown into the very core of my existence, anchoring every breath, every decision, every heartbeat to her. She was my miracle, the woman whose courage and desperation had rewritten my destiny. One golden afternoon in July, Sarah led me to the rooftop garden Malik at school. She carried a small box, hands trembling slightly. "Daniel," she said softly, voice warm but threaded with old caution. "I've been waiting for the right moment." She opened it to reveal a simple silver band engraved inside with our initials, and the date she had first come to me in the rain. Tears blurred my vision instantly. In that quiet, emotionally condensed moment, tenderness overwhelmed us, sun warm on our skin, city humming far below. I knelt without thinking, taking the ring voice, breaking. "Sarah, you've given me more than I ever deserved." The kiss was deep, passionate love, surging eternal healing every remaining wound. But even summer could not erase final echoes. A quiet investigation closed the federal review. Victor's documents discredited, my legitimate holdings cleared. Yet one last loose thread surfaced. An old associate, long retired, reached out with a warning. A minor faction, emboldened by rumors of my softening, planned a symbolic hit on a charity warehouse I had funded in Sarah's name, food and supplies for families like hers once was. Danger rose one final time, numbing in its persistence. Inner conflict burned, white-hot remorse for any lingering chaos my past allowed, violent tension at anyone daring to touch what she had inspired. I would end it completely. That night, under a full moon, the confrontation unfolded boldly on a deserted warehouse street in South LA. The faction arrived, small but defiant trucks idling, intent clear. My men met them head-on, suspense thickening the warm air. Their leader stepped forward, sneering. "Heard the great Daniel Kim's gone domestic. Easy target now." I emerged from shadows, dominance absolute. "You mistake family for weakness," I said, voice calm thunder. "It's the reason I win." The standoff stretched, moonlight glinting off, metal breaths held. They weighed bravado against reality, my power unchallenged, resolve forged in love. No destruction occurred. They dispersed under unyielding pressure, faction dissolved by morning. I returned home as dawn broke. Sarah waited on the balcony, sensing the night's weight. "It's truly over now?" she asked softly, rising eyes searching mine with lingering dread. "Over," I confirmed, pulling her close. Unease shifted to shock, then profound emotional rupture, tears spilling as the last chains of her old life fell away. "No more fighting," she whispered, body trembling with dizziness from the surge. I held her tighter, the burning love eternal. "Only building," I vowed. In that quiet moment, sunrise gilding the city, we stood together, loved the unbreakable legacy against every past injustice. The turmoil inside me had transmuted into peace. Every threat ended, every shadow banished. For Sarah, for Malik, I had created a world of light. Love had conquered all. 1 year had passed since that rainy night when Sarah burst into my world, desperate and drenched, clutching hope like a fragile thread. Los Angeles sprawled below us now from the same balcony where so many quiet moments had healed us. The city lights twinkled like a million stars fallen to earth, and the air carried the faint scent of jasmine from the garden Malik tended with proud 8-year-old seriousness. Inside the penthouse glowed warm Thanksgiving decorations, already up, a turkey roasting slowly, the aroma mingling with Sarah's collard greens and my mother's old kimchi recipe we now made together every holiday. I stood behind her, arms wrapped around her waist, chin resting on her shoulder. She leaned back against me, completely at ease. Now no more flinching at sudden noises, no more checking the refrigerator twice to be sure the food was real. Malik's laughter drifted from his room where he played a video game I had bought him for straight A's. Everything felt complete. Yet the inner turmoil inside me had not vanished. It had transformed into something deeper, more profound. Remorse no longer clawed with violence. It lived quietly now, a constant companion reminding me of the years Sarah had suffered in heartbreaking poverty while I accumulated wealth mere miles away. I still saw her in my mind as she had been, emaciated from hunger, humiliated by endless rejections, sleepless nights counting pennies under cold winds that seeped through cracked windows. The contrast remained stark. My life of private jets and influence that bent city councils against her former reality of eviction notices and empty cupboards. That knowledge shaped every decision now. Knowledge that true power lay not in dominance but in lifting others. Knowledge that love could bridge any divide. Knowledge that compassion was the greatest strength. Sarah turned in my arms, eyes soft in the moonlight. "Daniel," she whispered, voice warm and steady now, though still carrying that gentle respect when emotion ran deep. "You're thinking again. I can feel it." I smiled faintly, brushing a curl from her face. "Just remembering," I said, "and giving thanks." In that quiet, emotionally concentrated moment, tenderness wrapped us close. I knelt slowly, pulling a small velvet box from my pocket. The jade pendant her desperate courage had indirectly led me to cherish, now reset into an engagement ring. Her breath caught, eyes widening in shock, then deep disorientation, dizziness swaying her as joy collided with lingering disbelief. Tears spilled instantly. The emotional rupture complete, a woman who had known only survival, suddenly offered forever by a man whose world once seemed unreachable. "Sarah," I said, voice thick with the burning, passionate love that had anchored me from the first moment you saved me that night. "You and Malik, you gave me family purpose, life. Marry me. Let me spend every day making sure you never know cold or hunger or fear again." She sank to her knees before me, hands trembling as she touched the ring. "Yes," she sobbed, laughing through tears. "Yes, Daniel. 1,000 times yes." We kissed under the stars, love surging, eternal, transcending skin color class. Every barrier the world tried to impose, wealth and poverty could not stop it, power and desperation could not dim it. Humanity, compassion, love, they conquered all. The wedding came in spring, a beautiful blend on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Korean hanbok, elements woven with African-American traditions. Malik in a tiny tux carrying rings, friends from every walk of life, celebrating what love could build. Sarah walked toward me radiant, and in that moment, every remnant of inner turmoil quieted into peace. Years later, we stood on a rainy Los Angeles night, echoing that first one outside a struggling community center we had founded together. A young mother, soaked and desperate, approached hesitantly with her child. Sarah smiled warmly, opening the door. I placed a gentle hand on her back, guiding them inside to warmth, food, safety. Knowledge teaches us that one act of compassion ripples outward. Knowledge shows that love needs no permission from circumstance. Knowledge proves that humanity shines brightest in darkness. Life lesson after life lesson. We learn that giving heals the giver as much as the receiver. Life lesson upon life lesson, we understand that true wealth is measured in changed lives. Life lesson repeated through every story like ours. Compassion costs nothing, yet changes everything. Education comes not from books alone, but from lived empathy. Education grows when we see another's pain as our own. Education deepens when we act on that seeing. Education transforms societies when kindness becomes habit. Education completes the circle when those once helped reach back to help others. To every viewer watching this story, may good health fill your days. May joy light your path. May peace visit you daily. Love fiercely, give freely, live compassionately. If this story touched you, please like, subscribe, and share the channel. Crimson Romance Stories, and we bring new heartfelt videos every day. Tell us in the comments, how did this story make you feel? Does it remind you of real life? Have you witnessed or experienced love that crossed boundaries? Share your thoughts, your emotions. We read everyone. Goodbye for now, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.